This is Visitor's Book, and I'm Maija, your host. In this program, we're going to be meeting with diplomats and foreigners who are here in Pakistan, and we're going to find out what they really think about the country. So let's go. So our guest today is the South African High Commissioner Mthuthuzeli Madikiza. So let's go meet with him. Hello, Mr. Madikiza. So nice to meet you.
Hello to you too. Welcome to the South African Embassy and High Commission in Islamabad.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having us. So how long have you been in Pakistan now?
I arrived in Pakistan on the 3rd of February 2020.
Right.
And of course, it was a time that was just before the pandemic became a problem.
Yeah, so you haven't had too much time to move around in the country.
Well, the furthest I went to was Lahore.
Okay.
And a very short and busy visit. Part of what I was doing was to introduce myself to our honorary consul there.
Okay.
And meeting a number of companies. But generally it was meeting, hotel, and come back.
All right. But mostly you've been here in Islamabad.
Exactly, lockdown.
Right. So how has your experience been? Like, what is your impression of Pakistan as a country so far?
Look, I am really pleasantly surprised by what I see here, especially when it comes to the hospitality of the Pakistani people and, of course, the beauty of the country, the city, the capital specifically, because I had not seen others yet. I hear about Gilgit. I hope one day I will go up there. I hear about a number of other areas that are quite attractive.
Yeah.
So, of course, the other thing is the food, which I did not really got to taste in the wider sense of it. So far, what I have, maybe let me end there at that. That is basically what I've seen now that surprises me.
Yeah. What did you expect Pakistan to be like as a country? How much did you know about it before you came here?
I knew quite a lot about the struggle for independence.
Okay.
Quite a lot.
Right.
I knew quite a lot about the difficulties Pakistan has had to go through in the past 40 years with all these proxy wars and things like that. And I knew a little bit about how the government works and how the Pakistani live in their own country. I know them from South Africa, but basically how they live in their own country has been quite something that I always wanted to see.
Yeah, great. So this is actually your first posting as a High Commissioner or Ambassador. You started out in intelligence, right? How did your whole story get started? Where were you born in South Africa?
I was born in a small town near Cape Town, beautiful town called Paarl, a fruit-producing town, and specifically in the township called Mbekweni there. So I hail from there. I grew up there, even though now at my age I have lived more than 30 years outside that town. I've been a much more a person at the national than a small township and town boy.
Yeah, exactly.
But I consider it my home still. I have fond memories of that place growing up, and I believe it has made me what I am today.
So, of course, at that time, South Africa was a very different country from what it is today. What was it like growing up during apartheid?
Well, apartheid affected our lives in general, all aspects of life. But I want to single out a specific issue of human life, which is education.
Yeah.
For an example, especially in that area called the Western Cape, there was a very strict application of discrimination. So much so that in education, you, as a black African youngster, the education system was not intended to produce even anything close to a bricklayer. You can imagine.
Yeah.
The consequence of all this was that the high schools were very few.
Right.
And therefore, if you as a young person wanted to pursue your studies, you would have had to travel not less than 1,000 kilometers away from your home.
Right.
Get boarding somewhere, travel, finance, and so on and so forth, which also was a burden to our people, to our poor parents, who are in the main poor.
Of course.
And of course, that created a big chunk of young and school-going girls and boys looking for jobs in the low-paying range, because they would have been dropouts, and so that happened to my sister. That happened to my younger brother as well. So it was quite if you look at it from this prism only, you can imagine what else would happen, was happening growing up in that situation.
Yeah, I can imagine. So then you got very interested in politics. Would you say there was like a particular incident that happened, or what inspired you to join the African National Congress?
I would say, in answering that question, that in fact, not particular to me, an incident particular to me, but there was a growing activism during that time, sparked mainly by the 1976 student uprising around that time. And of course, the popularity that one of our revolutionaries called Steve Biko, and his death at the hands of the apartheid police, raised our awareness. And of course, that led to the emergence of student organizations, high school student organizations, that became politicized, that also took part in their own way in advancing the aims of the struggle. In that process, political parties that were banned looked for new recruits. So I happened to be one of those, and eventually, of course, I joined the African National Congress. Ended up in exile as a consequence of that. Because it was one of the biggest crimes to belong to a banned organization.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then when you realize that you were in a situation where the police and the special branch, the security branch, is aware of your activities, there are two choices: to wait until they catch you and end up in Robben Island, or you dash for your life.
So what kind of activities were you involved in? Was it something very dangerous, something that your family was very concerned about as well at the time?
From the perspective of my family, it was dangerous, because if I was caught, either I would be killed or end up in Robben Island.
Yeah.
But from our perspective, it was the good thing to do.
Exactly.
Because obviously we had come to a point, I think most of us, that probably with the generation of the Mandelas, the youth really had not done much, and we owed that generation a lot, at least until 1976, the uprisings. So there was that sense of righteous righteousness about it. And the conviction and the idealism of young people, you see. So there was a lot of push and pull.
Yeah. Where were you then exiled at first?
I spent most of my time in exile in Zambia, Lusaka, at headquarters, in the city that hosted the headquarters of the African National Congress.
Okay.
But I did my military training in the military wing of the ANC called Umkhonto weSizwe, the Spear of the Nation. That's what it was called.
Yeah.
I did my military training in Angola, which had provided us generously with land to construct our camps.
Yeah.
So I did my military training there. And then I went for training in intelligence and political school in what was then German Democratic Republic.
East Germany.
Popularly known as East Germany.
Okay.
Or GDR.
Wow. Yeah.
And then I went there twice in the 80s. And then I went to Soviet Union, which is now Russia, for further training.
Okay.
And that was then.
Yeah.
Of course, more training after freedom and
So then in the 90s, the situation started changing in South Africa, and then finally there were the first democratic elections. How did that then affect your career?
In fact, it affected it positively, in the sense that when the new government of 94 took over, the idea of transformation also meant that you change the personnel in the civil service.
Right.
And intelligence was one of those as well. So I found myself being appointed to head the intelligence service of a province in the Western Cape.
All right.
In 95. And I rose through the ranks and ended up at head office at being a deputy director general in the Foreign Intelligence Service.
Yeah.
So already, I had fallen in love with the trade, and from a young age, and so it was almost like a natural progression to me.
Yeah. And then you were also posted to some embassies abroad. Which countries were you posted in?
It was, first it was Syria.
Okay.
Country I loved so much. I love it even today, actually. It's a pity it's getting destroyed. The second country was Russia, Moscow. But then I decided to resign from there.
What led to that decision?
There are a number of reasons. One was that I felt there was a need for new blood. Look, I had already done that time something like 32 years under my belt.
Yeah.
And in that environment. The other reason, of course, was much more personal. I couldn't have my family around me there for a number of reasons, because others were still going to school in South Africa, and it was really not a conducive environment for me. It was personal, and of course, I think that's, I don't have to go deep in more details on this matter.
Yeah, and then you were working in some company for a while, but then now you've come back to diplomacy again.
Yes, well, actually what happened is that when I resigned, I was recruited into a private security advisory company, which basically was not something new to me. And one good thing about it is that I was recruited by my former buddies who had also retired or resigned from the mainstream government. So it was a nice environment. And I was given the opportunity to lead this company as the CEO. Yeah. We did well. But obviously, you know, like any private company, there would be upheavals here and there in terms of your cash flows and things like that. And maybe also, I think one of the reasons was the pursuance of other ventures by other members.
Right.
We decided to close shop, and at the same time, I was recalled to join the diplomatic mission.
Yeah.
Which I agreed to. And went to training, not knowing where I would be posted.
Yeah.
And only after I finished my diplomatic training, then I was told where I'm going.
And that was Pakistan.
That was Pakistan. And remember, I had also said that this country, I wanted to see it for myself.
Yeah.
You know, before. Yeah, so fortunately, I ended up here.
All right, time to take a short break. I'll see you when we come back. Welcome back. I'm here in conversation with the South African High Commissioner, Mr. Madikiza. So let's talk a little bit about the relationship between South Africa and Pakistan. How long has there been an embassy or high commission here in Islamabad?
Well, the relationship between South Africa and Pakistan can be defined and characterized in two phases. First of all, as a country that supported our struggle to freedom and justice, which basically was not your formal relationship between South African government of the time and Pakistan. And then, of course, the phase where a democratic government was in place, led by Mandela. Then that was much more formal. The embassy or the High Commission was established about 25 years ago. It is one of those very first ones that we established, yes.
Interesting.
And recall, Mandela had also visited Pakistan just before he became president.
Yeah.
It is one of those trips that we thought were to show appreciation for the contribution made by a country and its people.
So what kind of a contribution did Pakistan actually make?
Well, Pakistan was always in international fora backing the liberation struggle. Pakistan provided training to South Africans who were members of the liberation movements in a number of things, a number of areas, including training in diplomacy, in academic training. So we did benefit.
Yeah, and that is why Pakistan is an important country for South Africa now.
It is important. That is the reason.
So there's also a long history between the relationship between South Africa and South Asia. There has been a South Asian community living in South Africa since generations. How did they end up there and when?
Well, they were brought there by the British as indentured laborers for the sugarcane in particular.
Okay.
Because as soon as the British colonized South Asia and South Africa at the same time, they realized there's a potential for sugar plantations in South Africa, and the people who knew best how to deal with those kinds of things, like in farming, were in South Asia.
Right.
So they were brought also in that during that time.
Yeah.
And what we call the Indian community, because we did not make a distinction between the Pakistani. There was no Pakistani anyway. Grew from there, and it is one of the biggest communities outside this part of the world of South Asians.
How big is the Muslim community in South Africa?
It's estimated to be at 2%.
Okay.
I think more, but
yeah, that's the official.
That's the official.
Are they mostly of South Asian descent or from elsewhere as well?
Well, it depends in which part of the country. In the Western Cape, where I grew up, mostly originate from the Indonesia.
Oh, okay.
And those were slaves proper, brought in by the Dutch East India Company from Indonesia and Malaysia, those areas.
Yeah.
So, but if you go to other areas in the country, I suppose the most are South Asians.
Okay.
South Asians.
Yeah.
And
so you
Middle
could
East.
say like there is a Pakistani origin community living in South Africa.
Certainly.
Yeah.
Certainly. There is distinctly so, and they are known, they are Pakistanis.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. It's not, especially lately. It's not like, oh, this is an Indian, this is a Pakistani, it's the same, no.
They make a distinction.
There is a clear distinction.
Okay. So you mentioned Nelson Mandela visiting Pakistan. I think he visited twice, right? Why was Pakistan such a dear country to him? Why was it important?
Like I said earlier on, Mandela recognized the principled stance that the government and the people of Pakistan took against oppression of the majority in South Africa, and of course provided support. Yeah. And essentially, in my view, there was a lot, of course, as well, that Mandela learned in his own development as a person from the ideas that emanated or originated from here.
Okay, interesting.
I think so. Just by judging at the philosophical positions on a number of areas of human endeavor. So I think he learned a lot.
Yeah. Do you think he might have been like reading about Jinnah?
Certainly. He was an ardent reader.
Yeah.
He was a kind of person who, even if you are not a good person, if you have one good thing and he reads about it, he takes that and leaves the rest.
Did you ever get to meet him personally?
Oh yes, certainly.
What was your impression of him as a person?
Wow. I don't have words to explain, but he exuded aura.
Yeah.
He was a very thoughtful person, and who, even when, as he usually did, smiled to everybody. You wouldn't take that smile light. It's the kind of smile that makes you feel good inside.
Yeah.
A very much a person's person.
What was it like for you, like after all these years of struggle against apartheid, seeing him become president finally?
Believe you me, it was more than a dream. like thing. Imagine as a young person from early 20s singing in the camps, Mandela, free Mandela this, Mandela that, Mandela that. And beginning to believe that, he's our savior. He's the icon.
Yeah.
And because of the incarceration, not reading much about him except the old material. And also because you are banned, you are in exile yourself. You don't get access to everything every day.
Yeah.
And I remember the day I voted in the first place for the first time.
Wow.
Where I was. I remember the day he was released from prison, where I was exactly.
Yeah.
I remember the day he was inaugurated, where I was. It was such a, I can't even call it pleasant, because you can't have a pleasant experience and still shed tears.
Yeah.
Tears of joy, maybe?
Exactly. Wow.
Yeah. It was a touching, basically. I mean, if people don't know what it means to feel free for the first time, first day, like the Pakistanis of Jinnah's generation,
exactly,
they will never appreciate. Pakistan has always known and has learned that living or existing in a spirit of good neighborliness, something which is exemplified by the role that Pakistan is playing in Afghanistan and the relationship, of course, with China, and all the good intentions about other matters that affect the region. Pakistan has learned that stability, economic stability of the country depends on peace. And of course, we have learned together that negotiations in a conflict situation is the best to war. We have found that any government that is not people-centered is doomed to fail. So, in this short space of time I've been here, I don't even want to consider it rhetoric, but a good intention to make sure that people, the Pakistani people, are uplifted. I mean, you can look at it from many directions, including the debate about managing the COVID-19, the lockdown or not, the smart lockdown or otherwise. At the center of it all was the people.
Yeah.
So I don't know then what else is there to learn from us, because we have learned these things together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what would you like to focus on as the High Commissioner here? What are the topics that you would like to pay more attention to, maybe?
Well, I guess there is, having established these good relations long enough, there is trust. There is much more goodwill between the two nations. One would expect, and in fact, this is my main focus, the economic and trade relations.
Right.
You know, we have one of the highest in value terms as South Africa Pakistan-South Africa trade, a third of the African trade is between Pakistan and South Africa.
Oh, really? Oh.
And it has been growing steadily over the years since 2003. But there's a lot of room for improvement. There's a lot of things we can do together.
So that's what you will focus on then?
Certainly.
Okay. Time to take a short break. See you when we come back. Welcome back. I'm here in conversation with the South African High Commissioner, Mr. Madikiza. Let's talk a little bit about the coronavirus now. How has it impacted your work as a High Commissioner here?
Well, it really has affected my work, and I guess all of us as members of the diplomatic corps.
Yeah.
Coming here and arriving on the 3rd of February, and only to find myself locked down even before. I do a few meetings, including a commemoration of our National Day, which was had to be cancelled because it fell in April, including the credential ceremony. Included in that is our Africa group of ambassadors meetings.
Right.
That should be taking place regularly. And basically, even meetings to discuss issues of common interest with the government. We had planned as a mission and my head office to at least this year have a joint commission, which was to be led at a political level between Pakistan was going to host that. It didn't happen. We had thought that this year our Minister of International Relations and Cooperation would have at least set a date by now, or have come already to visit Dr. Qureshi. That didn't happen, and we don't know when is it going to happen.
So what is the situation in South Africa like with regard to coronavirus?
Well, we have, I hope things get better. We have had quite a rise in cases, and of course there is a drop right now. Our Minister of Health has expressed a cautious optimism around this, that probably this is now we are turning a corner in the right direction. And we have managed to contain, especially the fatalities.
Okay, that's good.
Especially that. We have managed to contain hospitalization, but cases don't mean necessarily hospitalization. But certainly, nothing is good about COVID-19. Even if you have got 100 people, you must be very afraid. But hopefully we are really turning a corner. From what I have seen, also from the statistics lately, there is an improvement.
Okay. In what ways do you think the challenges that Pakistan and South Africa are facing with regard to the COVID-19 outbreak are similar?
Well, first of all, we have had to start from a point where we didn't have all the resources that were needed to deal with this pandemic. So both of us as countries sought help. Both of us had to put strategies in place that were peculiar to our different environments. Now, if you look at our situation, we would have churches, we would have mosques, we would have different kinds of things that basically bring people together.
Yeah.
Even traditional things. So even there, what I've seen here impacting on these types of things, the people negatively, removing or getting rid of the things they know, and how they know them. I think we've had that kind of situation as well.
Okay.
Well, on the negative side, a little bit of indiscipline as well from the general population.
Yeah.
But all in all, we have done what we had to do as country, as governments.
Yeah, exactly. How do you think, how would you compare the healthcare system in the both countries? Is it similar in any ways?
I think there is a great deal of cooperation we can get into, because we have some strengths in the health system, and Pakistan also has its own, especially on the manufacturing side of the equipment, especially on that side. So my sense is that there is complementarity in this more than just differences.
Yeah.
I think we can do a lot there. If we had not had this coronavirus, we would have identified exactly by now what is it that we can do together. But I think at the intellectual level, regarding medicine, there's a great deal of potential in Pakistan, as much as we have.
Yeah.
That's another area of cooperation, the intellectual exchanges in that field, in many other fields.
So just to conclude, this time of the year, obviously, the Independence Day of Pakistan is here, and a lot of people are thinking about Jinnah and all of these historical figures. Is there anything you'd like to say about the respect that Nelson Mandela had for Jinnah, or the other way around, maybe?
Yes, of course, there's a lot to be said about the similarities and in respect to how Mandela viewed Jinnah. A lot of things. Of course, part of which would be, if he was still alive, would have been the independence of Pakistan, National Day.
Yeah.
I looked at these things and I found that in the context of the Mandela month and this month that is coming, the National Day of Pakistan, that actually there's a lot of activities they would have said the same things if they were alive at the same time.
Yeah.
Now, of course, the most important day is the National Day of Pakistan. They would have probably said the same thing about independence of Pakistan. The next thing, of course, is the what is called the Beijing Declaration, which is 25th anniversary now on women action. The other thing is, of course, the end of the decade of women, African Women's Day, which was on the 31st of July, the 12th of July, and so on and so forth. But I found something interesting about how they viewed women and their role in fighting for freedom. Very interesting. If I were to start with Mandela, on the eve of our Constitution and the Bill of Rights, he made a point to the team that was working on it that, we must give expression to, I'm not quoting verbatim.
Okay.
We must give expression. If you want me to quote verbatim, I can do that.
It's okay.
We must give expression in the Constitution, in the supreme law of the land, the recognition of the rights of women, and that everybody recognizes that, especially those women who fought for democracy and justice before us, him, and others. When you compare this towards the independence of Pakistan and just after, you will find similar kind of views from Jinnah.
Right.
A very interesting one is when he addressed women in 1947 in Karachi, where he made the point that, listen, take half of Pakistan, it's yours. Because we have not contributed less than men.
Yeah.
And if you look at the history of his relationship with the women's organization around his organization, and his sister in particular, Fatima, you'll find that this man was a very liberal person.
Absolutely.
Towards women. Matiba, Mandela, same thing. And I have a sense that Mandela learned a lot from Jinnah. He read a lot, especially about the struggle and ideas in South Asia. As a matter of fact, I'm not saying specifically Jinnah's things, but as a matter of fact, he read a lot about the struggle here. He knew things we didn't know. I mean, the man had 27 years in prison, treating everything.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, I just wanted to make this point in these times towards the National Day of Independence that, women should not be forgotten in these things, because this is what our two fathers of our two nations always had in mind.
Great. Okay, then it's time for a rapid fire round. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Shalwar kameez or suit?
Suit.
Okay. Lahore or Karachi?
Lahore.
Okay. The Atlantic or the Indian Ocean?
Atlantic.
Okay.
I come from Cape Town, the Atlantic. So
right. Okay. Cricket or football?
Can be both.
Yeah, sure. Okay. Johannesburg or Cape Town?
Cape Town, of course.
Yeah. Mountains or beaches?
Beaches.
All right. Chris Morris or Dale Steyn?
Chris Morris.
Okay. Malai curry or biryani?
Biryani.
So, first thought that comes to your mind when I say Margala Hills?
Lovely.
Yeah? Okay. Safaris?
South African safaris?
Yeah?
I don't know any of it.
Islamabad?
Margala Hills.
Okay. The best thing about Pakistan?
Oh, the people.
Great. Okay, then it is time for you to sign our visitor's book. Here you go. Okay, let's see what you wrote. I wish to share more of my passion and love for Pakistan with my compatriots. Great, thank you so much. I really enjoyed the conversation and I hope you continue to have a lovely time in Pakistan. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Welcome.
That's it for today. Please join me again next week and don't forget to follow us on our social media accounts at indus.news. Stay home, stay safe, goodbye.